Have you ever wanted to be a host on an ACA show or be the one calling the shots behind the scenes? Are you in Austin, Texas, or at least Austin adjacent? Well, on Saturday, February 25th, make your way down to the Free Thought Library because we'll be holding open auditions for show hosts and orientations for prospective crew members. For those wanting to be hosts, you'll be able to sit in the studio where our shows are broadcast and we'll put you through your paces to see if you can be one of the new personalities of the ACA. For future crew members, you'll get hands-on experience using the equipment used for broadcast and will help us record the host auditions. If you've ever dreamed of being part of the ACA productions, then this is your chance to show us what you've got. This event is free. For more information and registration, visit tiny.cc/ACA auditions.
It's time to get sexy on Secular Sexuality.
Hello, and welcome to Secular Sexuality, the ACA show edging ever closer to one hell of a climax. I'm Christy Powell, and if you missed our announcement last week, I'm sorry to say this will be our last episode before taking a brief refractory period. Rest assured, dear lovers, it's not you, it's us. And after nearly 5 years of ongoing togetherness, a little absence may make the heart grow fonder. So before I get any more choked up, the five of us, plus the sin sage in our hearts, are going to be speaking about some of our favorite moments, some of our most important takeaways, and our hottest memories. So please give us a call while you can at 512-991-9272, because it is once again time to get sexy, and the rest of the show is coming right now.
All right, Miss O, you're up first. Tell us, how'd you get mixed up in all this?
They found me. I was originally on as a guest with Black Widow Burlesque, and we filmed in my library, which is just over there. And that was in 2019. And I got my 5-timers jacket because I was a guest multiple times over, and then eventually they were like, why don't you just stay? And I was like, okay.
Wait, there's a jacket? What?
No, there isn't really a jacket,
Oh.
but we talked about it because some people remember old Saturday Night Live jokes. And I was going to make a jacket, and I have not had time to make it, so that kind of sucks.
I am down for some crafting. We need to make some jackets for sure. So besides jackets and SNL jokes, which I am a big fan of, what's one thing that still has you turned on from SecX after all this time?
I think one of the things that stands out to me most about the show is that it has made this kind of communal space for people who are all far-flung reaches of the planet and often pretty isolated in their identities and beliefs. And I think it's like this virtual hub where people can find someone to talk to and confide in for things that in their, like local communities, families even, they don't have. And I think that's probably one of the strongest and most powerful things about the show, at least to me.
Completely agree. I think that's super important. And Erin, what about you? What's turning you on?
What's turning me on, specifically about secular sexuality?
Yes, unless you
I-
want to share other things too.
Well, I think this is on my mind right now, so let's just go there. What I have loved about the show and what always gets me turned on is that I came out of a pretty conservative Christianity, purity culture, the works. I've told my story. Other people have had the same kind of experience. And when you come out of something like that, you have so many questions, and sometimes you don't even know what questions to ask. So when I started watching secular sexuality, first of all, there was questions that were answered right on the show. But I think more importantly is that it kind of sparked this curiosity that I'd never really gotten into before. So what I really love about the show and what has been really, really good for me is seeing people from all different kinds of areas explaining how they kind of express themselves sexually, whether it's like the job that they're in or just experiences that they've had. So I think what turns me on is just learning and just watching and getting ideas on what I should look into further and the resources for that too. So I think, yeah, I like to learn. It is a bit of a turn on. I'm a sapiosexual, if you will. So yeah, that's what turns me on about this show.
And this is why we get along so well. You and I are similar in that way. We do love to nerd out, even about sex.
Yep.
And I'm wondering, do you have a particular moment in mind from the show that you're thinking of?
Yes, definitely. I want to show a clip of this episode that I found fascinating, and it was when we had the dominatrix Chloe Manson on, and that was one thing that I had questions about, and I'd been curious about, and I'd done some reading, but I really loved getting to hear straight from her mouth what her job is like.
Yeah, let's see it.
Let's jump right into it, because I am very excited to learn about what you do. I'll be honest, when I was like writing questions, preparing for this interview, I had to keep going back because I realized that like half of the things that I was talking about were just dumb stereotypes that I saw from like 90s sex comedies and honestly like the butt of the joke in a lot of ways. So rather than just debunking all of that, I want to get your elevator pitch. I mean, what does it mean in 2022 to be a professional dominatrix?
It means helping people explore themselves. I was actually talking about this yesterday. A lot of people don't find work fulfilling, but I personally find my work incredibly fulfilling. When clients laugh or cry during a session, or at the end, they're like, "I can't believe this. You've opened my eyes and my world. You've made me feel so great. I'm on cloud 9, etc." And it's just teaching people and giving them that experience, and especially in a safe and educated way.
That's a great clip. Hey, Christy and Phoebe, fancy seeing you two here.
It's a shocker, that one.
Right? This is great. Well, I am about to ask y'all the same questions that I just asked our previous two hosts. So get ready for prying personal questions. I'm going to start with you, Phoebe. What has SecX been doing to turn you on?
Well, it did a lot to help me just explore who I am. And if you've seen any of the episodes that I'm on, they are very trans-heavy episodes. I mean, there's even an entire episode where the whole show is just going out on a date with me. And that was one of my most cathartic things I've ever done in my life, because I was the subject and I was on it, and it was just a fabulous thing to do. And I'd seen other trans women on the show. So I'd seen Arden of Eden, I'd seen Katie Montgomery, and then seeing that representation, and then realizing in that episode, I was that representation that I had seen. It was me. I was the representation that I'd been asking about, wanting to see. And it was me. I was now that representation. And it was really a wonderful yet odd and cathartic moment. It reminds me of when Jerry Springer said, "Why did I go and see Jerry Springer at the opera?"
Well, I loved that episode as well. And it was one of the best dates I've ever been on. So thank you for having me along on it. That was fantastic. And if people haven't watched that one, they need to. There's some good show and tell and everything else that happens.
Start waving around vaginal stents at one point.
Yes, it was fabulous. Alrighty, so Christy, how about you? You've been on here for, what is it, almost 5 years now? Are you still turned on? And I cannot hear your audio.
Well, I apologize, but I'll say that in all of that time, so many sexy conversations with so many different types of folks. It was really incredible to meet some of the guests that we had. But as somebody who, when I first became a therapist, studied a lot of hypnosis, the episode that we did with Eve of Eve's Garden about erotic hypnosis and getting to like dive into that conversation, getting to introduce the world, or at least our corner of it, to the idea of like a hands-free, hypnotically triggered orgasm, I think blew a lot of people's minds. And so that's definitely a moment of pride and something I still get turned on by. I'll always be proud of the summer where we had Alice Little, the #1 grossing legal escort in the United States. Immediately before we had Amberly Rothfield, who was the #1 phone sex operator in the country at the time. Incredibly proud moments. Amberly then introduced us to Sin Sage, who came in and had this remarkable conversation with us about girl-on-girl porn and how that may be different from lesbian porn, and the idea of like porn actually made by and for lesbians. And then probably the sexiest moment in all my time at Secular Sexuality was when our producer Greg and I actually got to go on site and watch some of that girl-on-girl porn being made. That's a memory that I will hold on to for the rest of my life.
I mean, you're turning me on just saying all those words.
Oh yeah, no, in that order, they're pretty good.
Well, I mean, yeah, ooh, the lady juices in me, they are flowing.
Basement flooded. Excellent. Excellent content.
Clean up in the sauna.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, I've been around naked people. I have interviewed people in lingerie before, but there is definitely something about sitting on a couch you just watch somebody fuck on to then ask them about their ambitions, to ask them about, politics and ethics and morality. That was a really beautiful moment.
That is outstanding. And I love how you describe that too. It's sexy and it's also smart, which I think personally describes the show. I hope it does. But that's our story now, but it might be fun if we took a minute to go in the way back machine and take a look at the early adolescent, dare I say, gangly baby giraffe in roller skates years of the show. Should we roll that early clip?
Let's get it out of the way.
It's time to get sexy on Secular Sexuality.
Hello and welcome to Secular Sexuality. I am Megan, and with me is my co-host.
Howdy, I'm Christy.
And today is our launch. How are you feeling about that?
Hey, I am super excited. We've been doing this for a couple of weeks now for a lot of people who are close to the ACA, and we're really excited to be out there wide and to get to meet all of y'all and show you what we've been working on.
Yeah, we've got a lot of fun stuff. Today's going to be more an introduction to us and some fun shenanigans we have planned. Not too much serious stuff today, but that's not to say that we won't get serious at some point.
Yeah, so what then is us if we're introducing us, right? I mean, definitely shenanigans. Mentioned that, covered that.
Yes.
Gonna be some shenanigans.
Yes, for sure. I do believe we are also discussing some educational side of things, especially for those people who are coming out of religion. Sex is not necessarily something they were told much about or were told not to do.
Yeah, we're kind of not allowed to talk about it, right? We're allowed to use it in our advertising for everything from shampoo and gum and whatever the hell else.
M&Ms.
Right, exactly. Strong sexuality. That green M&M, you're not wrong.
It is sexy.
You're not wrong. That is
sexy.
a
Yes.
sexy M&M.
It is.
Welcome to
Hi.
getting to know us, by the way. Now
Yes.
you know a little bit more about me than you maybe wanted to right out the gates, but yeah, it's a sexy M&M.
It is.
So yeah, we're here to talk about sexuality in a way that we don't often get to. From the dancing to be very clear, pre-Tucker Carlson green M&M references. Yeah, okay, that's a fun clip to watch. How does that strike y'all? How does that live up to what this show has become?
Well, personally, I'm a little disappointed. You promised gangly awkwardness, and I really don't think it was that awkward. So,
No, it was really good actually. You could feel the excitement in the air on that first date.
Oh, uh-huh.
Mhm.
Yeah, so you get a pass. I would never call someone awkward because, have you met me? Yes. But I think that was a great setup to the show, and I remember when that was new and being super excited about it, and I still am. So as far as relationships go, this one's lasted a pretty long time, I think.
Yeah. Well, let me ask y'all. I mean, Kara, what has been some of the, I don't know, bigger moments on this show for you, or maybe in particular something that you feel really proud of here?
Oh man, I just feel really privileged and honored to have been able to be a part of it. I remember just thinking this show was great back before I was on it, and then I was so pumped to get to be on it, and then to get to stick around and host some shows. Every single one that I've been able to be a part of has been so much fun, and I have learned so much. It's hard for me to really even pick one. I'm thinking back to a couple of the early episodes. I mean, they're all so good. I absolutely loved the one where we talked about bad sex education with Janice Selby, and we just laughed and laughed for a couple of hours and got to hear from all sorts of callers about the silly experiences they had. And it was kind of one of those cathartic episodes where maybe we didn't talk about that much super serious stuff, but we had a really good time and got to discuss some things that maybe people had forgotten about or hadn't thought about in a while or had been afraid to mention to anybody else. And so it was a lot of fun. But we've had some other episodes too that I think were, we get into serious issues that, talk about really current social events, and then we have others that are just a lot of fun. So yeah, I guess that's a long way of saying I kind of like them all.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, I think we're gonna take a look at a clip from that Vagina Shame episode here in just a moment. Phoebe, was there anything that you wanted to add, or to set up that clip, or to even just acknowledge, something you learned from this show, or something that you felt was significant?
I learned from that episode in particular, as somebody who had a penis and now has a vagina, just quite what it meant to me in that episode. I mean, some of these things are very cathartic to me, and I hope it was educational to everyone else, because I actually got to say, well, hang on a minute, vagina shame isn't just aimed at, well, those with vagina. People with penises get very ashamed of, what they're sticking their penis into, and that was something that I didn't realize when I went into the episode. But as the episode progressed, it's like, hang on a minute, when I had a penis, I was very picky about what I stuck my penis into.
Yeah, I hear that. Well, let's take a look at that clip.
When it comes to genitalia, we all of a sudden become babbling messes of incoherence, and we can't say what they are. Labia, vagina, clitoris, vulva, etc., etc. Perineum. Why is it these words that are just almost taboo, for goodness sake? And why do we perpetuate these myths onto children at a very young age? Why is it seen as a vulgarity to have accurate and sensible conversations with children when they're learning body parts? We don't teach children inaccurate terms for things intentionally for any other part of the body. You wouldn't call your stomach your food digester part, or I'm terribly sorry, I'm just going to put this in my speaking hole. You don't say things like that. That's just nonsense. So why do we have all of this range of terms that are, even the dog disagrees, are just nonsense?
Yes, and do we imagine that by doing that we're not, alerting children to the fact that this is something shameful? This is something that we can't discuss. You can't ask questions about this. You should feel bad about having this on your body. You need to cover it up. You need to never mention it again. What is that going to do when they have questions, or if they have a problem that they need to discuss?
Or a person is a problem, for example. This is the kind of things that we...
All right.
I ranted well there. I really did rant well there.
It was an
always
excellent
good for
rant.
it, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
that was
I
also one of
was
my
not a part of
favorites.
that episode, and it was I was incredibly proud to hear everything that y'all put together. It was so nice to not only like take time off, but then to be able to tune in and recognize that we had worked to put together this group of people to have this conversation. I thought it was excellent.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear that. We were very pleased that you liked it.
So we were going. Now, will the big boss man will the big boss man will he approve of
Yeah.
the intimacies that we are going down here and the rabbit holes that we are coming out with? But that episode, I think, just epitomizes what SecX is all about. It is about having these free-flowing conversations about things which, inside of most religions, are just never spoken about. I mean, I grew up in a very conservative Jewish household, and you would never have had a conversation like that with my parents. Never with my siblings would you have had that kind of conversation, and it would have just been, oh, we're gonna get in real trouble if we have these kinds of conversations. And seeing the representation that we have on this show, from people espousing cuddle therapy to people espousing different kinds of Buddhism to people espousing their own individual ways that they're doing their in-person escorting work, to people who have no gender at all on this show. It's just incredible that we are at the forefront of having these conversations, and it is amazing that we're actually in this part of the progression of human history only now really going hard on having these conversations, and it is fairly fantastic that we are the ones doing it.
Yeah.
Oh, 100%. That's one of the things I loved about that episode too, and many of the other episodes in particular. We'll come on here and get to talking about some topic, and it'll remind me of, something that just happened in the news the other day, or some conversation that I had with someone in my family recently. And it's really kind of nice to get to discuss these things that are real issues in real people's lives that matter, and to talk about them in a way that treats people and these issues as if they matter, instead of just brushing them aside. So I love that.
Yeah,
Okay.
I really appreciated early on the opportunity that we had to not just introduce people to some sexy idea that they'd never heard of, but to introduce people to a culture or to an issue that they maybe weren't concerned about. And to put resources out into the world for some of those marginalized communities. I host a lot of the episodes of Secular Sexuality, the show notes, on my own personal website, at least early on. And so oftentimes I will see, like, what are people searching for on Google to come to my website? And one of the things that has consistently come up for like 3 years plus now is people who are Googling osteogenesis imperfecta and sex, because there's so few resources on that specific condition and how to have sex, that even my lowly website is drawing in a significant amount of traffic, because we were able to cover an idea like that on this show. It's one of the interviews I'm most proud of, and I'd love to take a look at that clip of Lex and I discussing how they manage sex with their disability.
So when it comes to relationships in particular, especially in the physical aspects of relationships, because inevitably any type of romantic relationship, you're gonna get to a point. How I assume that you've already addressed most, if not all, the issues before you reach that point.
Yeah.
I mean, you would probably, you're getting hot and heavy and you're suddenly like, okay, wait a second, there's something I have to tell you. And, you know, have you ever had that situation happen?
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah. I mean, we're, especially after it was in 2013, I got T-boned by a pickup truck. My body had shifted and moved in certain ways that hadn't been the way my body was before. So, just to be frank, like, intercourse was very different. It was an adjustment. And I do kind of tie that into my disability, because I don't know if someone without a brittle bone disease would have been injured as bad.
Yeah.
Just to kind of tie that in. it was different. It was a conversation that as an adult, my body had changed. I wasn't sure how that was going to, I mean, honestly, it did for like a year. Like I didn't know how to really be intimate with somebody. It really took a while for me to kind of like figure out my own body and then
All
be
over
able
again.
to, and then be able to share that with someone.
Well, here we are, barreling towards the final round of calls that we will take on this incarnation of secular sexuality. So please pick up that telephone and give us a ring. If you are a former host, we'd love to hear from you. If you're a former person who's called in, please call in again. And yeah, it's just the amazing calls that we have had on this show. So if you can call us on 512-202-6561, we will see you after the mid-roll.
The annual penis festival and they have big penis floats that people carry around on their shoulders. You get penis shaped lollipops and it's a big turnout.
Well, I went hiking last Saturday and I was in Bastrop, Texas, trying to just enjoy nature, and I kept looking at my phone because I wanted to know what's up with the Alaskan UFO thing.
Marjorie Taylor Greene, Lauren Boebert, and that other white guy, and some other white guys.
Not these white guys. Not these.
Right.
Not
Not
those two.
No.
Y'all have an accent. We can
Not right. That don't have an accent.
In New King James, though, it does say, "I am bringing floodwaters on the earth to destroy from under heaven all flesh, which is the breath of life. Everything that is on the earth shall die." So everything. Right? So God, that's a God quote.
If God creates people that He knows are not going to be saved, why do that if they're just going to be, destroyed ultimately?
I do believe that God created a certain people to be saved, and God created a certain people to be damned in hell.
Yikes.
Well, we are in luck. We do have a caller on the line. We have somebody who has been on this show before. So, Serafina, welcome back to Secular Sexuality. You are live on Secular Sexuality with Phoebe Rose, Miss O'Keefe, and ex-Christian Aaron. Hello!
Hello, and how is everyone today?
Well, feeling
Pretty
sexy,
good.
of course.
Pretty
Feeling
good.
sexy. Feeling really damn sexy on the, curtain call of secular sexuality. So, yeah, what did you want to bring to the table about? Well, why don't you tell the audience, for those who don't know who you are, well, who are you?
Oh, gosh. Well, I am just an ordinary person who happened to be in the room when we were discussing what we were going to do with this new show, before we even had the name taken from elsewhere. And it was always such a dream to get to be on the show and take calls from people who really, really needed to talk. And just knowing that we were able to make connections like that, even from the beginning, was so beautiful, and I miss it. And so hearing this final episode is making me all in my feelings and sad.
Oh. So, from your time on the show, what was your biggest takeaway from your time on the show?
Oh gosh, my biggest takeaway. was that the crew and the call screeners are just the most amazing thing to have in the world, because so much goes on back there, you know, that no one gets to see, but it's all the hard work that makes the show what it is.
I'm glad that you brought that up, because we will acknowledge them later in the show, but it's so true that this is a huge production. Everything that gets, put on these shows, there's so many people who are volunteering behind the scenes. There's a lot of work that kind of goes in behind the scenes. The host, the planning, Christy in particular, just constantly amazes me with how on top of it he is with planning all of our topics and everything. And sometimes things don't always go exactly as planned, just like the topic of sex in general. Sometimes things go a little not as planned, but I mean, it's just amazing how well everybody has come together to make this a thing for the last 5-6 years. I know myself, I've listened to most of the episodes, but there's still more for me to go back and watch before I was a part of the show. So I thank you, Serafina, for being a part of it too, because those episodes are still there and they're still helping people, right?
So, Serafina, you've got the floor at the moment. Tell us three and the audience what you want everyone to remember about either your time on the show or secular sexuality as a whole.
I want everyone to remember that this was a place where we could tackle issues that no one else would tackle, for an audience that was largely unreached for this sort of subject, and just the brilliance and amazement that came from that connection. That's what I want people to remember.
And is there anything that you think that you'd like to see in the reboot of Secular Sexuality when it does come back? What would you like to see the new brand spanking Secular Sexuality? Because I mean, we're all talking about the end, but we are going to be coming back after a hiatus. What would you like to see and how would you like it to look?
Oh, flash and special effects everywhere. That'd be great. Brand new look.
Is this a cleanup? Are we going to have to get a cleanup in Texas now, Serafina? Is it going to be a cleanup in Texas now?
We're going to break the drought. That's all I know.
Well, I just want to chime in while we have Serafina on the line to acknowledge one of the things that I will remember most about this show was how incredibly nervous it made me, especially early on when we were trying to figure out the technical aspects of everything else. And Serafina, I just want to thank you for how calming and reassuring and kind of a backbone in those really early days with me and Megan that you were. And I'm so glad that you called in tonight. I really, really appreciate everything that we did together in those first couple years.
I couldn't not. Just seeing the ad for the show, I just had to call in. And I'm so glad you're your time now. Thank you all so much.
All right. Well, thank you.
Yeah. So, as I'm, designated call person, Cara, Christy, Misso, Erin, what was your favorite call from the history of SecX? What was your favorite call?
Oh, that's a good question. It's like I don't know if I have one in particular right off the top of my head, but I know that I sometimes would try to predict what the call would be about when they first get going, and I remember just being always like constantly surprised with where these topics would go, and whatever call it was, seeing people connecting on either side of the conversation was my favorite part. So I mean, all of them, but I don't have one in particular that I have ready for us to watch tonight. I love that human aspect of calling in and finding a little bit of comfort or answers to your questions, or maybe some resources on the other end of the call. That's always been my favorite part.
But speaking of clips, I'm reliably informed that we do have a clip lined up, and we're going to embarrass Cara now because this is apparently Cara's favorite clip, and it's about sexual submissiveness and femininity. So, yeah, let's roll that clip.
The things that we are afraid of are very much the things that we play around with, and very often the things that we eroticize. And so it makes sense to me that if you are at a moment in your life where you are coming to terms with your gender and beginning to access your femininity, that powerful, beautiful, powerful thing could also be really fucking scary. And that you would want to eroticize that and play with that a little bit, because playing with something in a like non-dangerous, outside of the real world kind of way, that's how we gain a sense of mastery over it. That's how we get comfortable with it, is when we do it naked and sillily and in our bedrooms alone, or with the people that we can be intimate and trusting with. That's our opportunity to goof around before we are obligated to take those things seriously and to be more responsible about the way we see gender. How does that land with any of y'all?
Yeah, I love that, Christy. I think you answered it the best. You're the expert here. But I'll throw in a book recommendation because I feel like that's what I'm here for. I read this book in grad school called Techniques of Pleasure by Margot Weiss, and it's an ethnographic study of BDSM community in, I think, San Francisco. And they sort of interrogate this issue in one of the chapters, and she kind of goes into this explanation of how, you know, feminist theorists have argued over this very topic. I love that you mentioned Judith Butler,
I can imagine.
Christy. Yeah, and there's kind of this this sort of split where you have some of the older guard feminists that will, you know, take this sort of tone that, oh yeah, it's you know, denigrating towards women if you're being submissive in the bedroom, and you know, we need to, you know, have a project of, you know, separating femininity from submissiveness, and you know, that's all fine and well. But then you have the other side of the argument, which is what's wrong with enjoying sex the way you like it? If you're doing something that is fun for you, how is it, you know, empowering women to say you're not allowed to do that thing that you enjoy? You should just not enjoy sex instead, as a political statement.
Yeah, as a political statement.
Right. Like, if you want to do that, fine, I guess, but I don't think you need to.
I would like to stay there.
Yeah.
It's more complicated for me being trans, because there's that little anxiety that I'm manufacturing the things that I see as feminine. Like,
but isn't that what we all do?
I want to be.
Yeah. So I was thinking something kind of similar. I like that you both have such a good like educational background to like add to it. I will add my non-trained comments to it. What I think I'm noticing about this whole kind of topic is like it is really good to like kind of dig into the weeds of like the kind of intellectualize like what's going on here, and when did this movement start, and when did we start trying to take these two things and separate them. But I think I keep going back to like the original wording that you had in your call, is that you have the sense of shame, and like maybe like really connecting with like what does that feel like to you. And even if we step back from like what the actual you know, this connection that between submissiveness and femininity, and kind of deal with some of that shame that you're having, because ultimately, like, what is that shame doing? Like, what is it saying for you? Like, is it a feeling of not good enough, or that you're not doing it right, or something like that? I'm just connecting to that part of it, that like the sense of shame is brutal. It's very hard to deal with, and I think overcoming shame, depending on how you break it down into the topic of it, and define it, the shame is an actual real powerful emotion that we have to kind of process and deal with.
Yeah. So how does that land for you? How does that sound like sort of what we are trying to do here?
Well, you know what I loved about that call, aside from the fact that we got to speak to someone about, you know, an issue that was really bothering them, and the fact that I got to give a book recommendation because I just really get turned on by books. It's a thing. I'm sorry, y'all.
You're a real bookworm. You're just a worm sticking your head out of that book going, this is a sexy book, read me.
Yes, exactly. I would love to just live in a book and just feel like that scene from one of those movies where he's like, I just want to like roll you up into a little ball and just stuff you inside. Anyway, I digress. What I liked about that call was that, when we have hosts that come from different backgrounds, we have Christy, who's obviously an expert in sex and relationships and doing therapy. And then I have my own set of readings that I've done. And then Erin brought her life experiences as well and her insights. And we get to respond to these questions from a lot of different perspectives. And I just thought it was great that we were able to all kind of give a perspective on it. I hope it was helpful to the person who called. I feel like I learned a lot. I hope other people did. But I love that we get to hear so many perspectives on the show and people describing their situation that may be a situation that other people who are watching the show have never even considered before. And I think that's also an important piece of what we do here, which is bringing to the surface, to the public, if you will, issues that affect people, that are important to people, that some people may not have realized or ever put much thought to. And we get to sit here and discuss them in detail and pontificate and bring up obscure book recommendations sometimes.
Yeah, I love that we are able to just bring a little bit of attention to some of these issues because we are so isolated when it comes to our sexuality. We not only because of the shame and guilt that we feel, but we don't really talk about it in most social circumstances. Most folks are in a monogamous relationship of some sort of stripe. And that being the case, your sex life kind of really becomes, for I think most people, something that only them and like maybe a few other small people in their lives have any information about or any understanding of. And so to be able to talk to a wide range of people, help people feel a little bit less isolated and bring some compassion towards all of these different communities. I mean, recently we got to learn about Miss World Bear competition. We've gotten to speak to people who have a sex life largely centered around a silicone doll. We have spoken to people in caregiver little relationships, as well as just so many different dynamics, so many different ways to be. And I recognize that, if you tune into an episode about being about trans rights, for instance, or about some like very specific niche culture, that may not be you. But I think if we can bring a little bit of attention to all of that and start to recognize our common humanity, start to recognize that, okay, there is something of me in a lady bear. There is something of me in a pet player. And whether or not those are like my things, just kind of reconnecting our sexuality to our culture and to our attention and conversation. I'll tell you, it definitely also makes people feel incredibly uncomfortable, which is something that I've just enjoyed doing for most of my life.
As I say, the thing that struck me the most when I was on was that people would kind of like seek me out when I was back on the show. So I'd always have Ashley call in. Ashley was like, guarantee it, every time I was on, Ashley from West Virginia, she'd call in. Wouldn't matter. I was on the show, Ashley would call in. And I'd get to have these longer conversations with people that would call back in and call back in and call back in and call back in. And it was just fantastic to have this place, this safer space. And I've seen it with other callers on different hosts that were here, different co-hosts that were here, and so on. But people found it a place they were comfortable to pick up their phone and speak to us and go, yeah, we can have these chats with these internet strangers because these internet strangers have said, here is a hand, come and grab hold of it and have a chat. And I think that was amazing because people would call in over and over again. And it meant that we were doing something that was fairly amazing because we were quite open to it, going, yeah.
Yeah, and bringing a diversity of people together. But I also always appreciated the diversity of guests and the different takes that we could get from different sorts of people. I'll tell you what, they've got another clip I want to set up in just a moment. But why don't we go ahead and jump back onto the phone? So, Phoebe, do you have somebody for me?
I might do. This person, I'm not quite sure how to describe this Scotsman, but this true Scotsman. Hello, Richard Gilliver.
Hello, Phoebe Rose. How are you?
You are live on the final episode of Secular Sexuality. You are live.
When I was pregnant with my first child, Adelaide, come on.
I'm very nervous.
You are live with Cara, Christy, SecX, and Erin.
Somebody mentioned in the chat earlier on that this was the kind of premiere show of this type, and it's absolutely true. This has done so much for so many people, and you know, I'm a cis het man with 2 kids. You know, and you sometimes feel in that position that you're not the target audience for this kind of show. But I've learned so much from watching this show and listening, you know. And a couple of years ago, when I first started volunteering with the ACA, I got people's pronouns wrong all the time. And, I was identifying people as they physically presented, rather than as that from their chosen pronouns and stuff, and just things like that. I've learned so much over the years just listening to this show and, you know, having that education and from these great hosts and people. And like, you know, one of my favorite shows was just a couple of weeks ago, and I think Christy's just mentioned it with the Miss World Bear, and just things like that will open your eyes in so many aspects of things that you think you understand. You know, to me, bears were always just big, you know, cuddly guys, gay guys, and there was anything other than that is just so like eye-opening. And having that education presented on the show that's what this show is here for. And it's done so much for people like me who kind of I was born in the 70s in a steel town. You know what I mean? And it's just so kind of educating for everybody. No matter what background they're from.
I mean, even if you are Scottish, we'll let you off on that one. From this English perspective, we'll let you off on this Southern English woman. We'll let off this Northern dwelling English parts of the country. We'll let you off on that one. But it's a pleasure to know that this show has helped you. And it's a pleasure to know that you're now comfortable with yourself to sit down and do episodes of the Non-Profits with me, and you will still not be taking my throne. You can be whatever you like, but that throne is mine, mister, and you're gonna fight me to the death.
I wouldn't dream of trying to take your... I don't think I could take your throne if I even wanted to.
But what would you say, Richard, to say, I'm going to be very English and very stereotypical, very British. You're down the pub, you're having a pint after work, and cis het man, married, 2 kids, and you mentioned this show. What would you say to get that person to tune in and just watch the show? How would you sell the show?
Absolutely. You know, people need educating, I think, and you know, that's my kind of premier thing, pushing education on all sorts of levels, and just sitting down, and if you're sitting down in a pub having a pint with someone, and you know, you just sat very comfortable, and in this country you do hear kind of lots of offensive language around people, and you just challenge them and just say, you know what, I've actually got a recommendation for you, sir. There's this wonderful show that's on where you can learn all about your ignorance. You know, please listen, please go watch. I've been heavily promoting this show in the last couple of days for this episode, and I have come across that kind of there were a couple of people just yesterday when I was doing the live stream talking about trying to talk about trans people. And, so I've just pointed them in the direction of this show. This is what this show is for, educating people. And it's what people, some people do need that education. And even people like me who've always kind of considered themselves an ally, I've always also been very, very ignorant and just not had the education that I need to talk to people properly and use the correct pronouns and use, language which is inclusive. Due to my background, I grew up in kind of a time when a trans person was derogatory, known as a tranny. It was just a man dressed up as a woman. And, we've had some great storylines on British TV, as Phoebe probably knows, over the years, where these issues have tried to be addressed. But that was going back 20 years, and we've still got so much work to do. And I think this is why shows like this are so, so important for people.
Yeah, Phoebe, you're kind of asking that hypothetical question about recommending the show or something. And I'll always be proud of a story that Nate Smith told about playing over the speaker on a job site, one of our episodes. And then that leading to a conversation and a opening up and somebody coming out of the closet that previously had not felt comfortable doing that at work, and sort of that being the beginning of somebody somewhere getting to live their actual true identity out in the world. Honestly, it's cheesy to say, but if it happens just once, it feels worthwhile, right?
I love that. Yes, 100%. And also shout out to Nate and his pink hard hat that he wore to work.
It's a way to be an ally on a job site.
Yes, it's great to have allies on job sites. And you're right, Christy, this is a place where we can talk about issues that maybe people listening or people who would like to be listening or will listen in the future, aren't having those conversations out loud with anybody else. And some of the topics that we talk about, if you were to Google them, you're going to fall down a hole on the internet that might go to a dark place.
Yeah.
And it's hard to get good information about some of these issues. And that's one of the things that I just think is great about this is it's a place to talk about things without judgment and to help people feel like they're valid humans and there's not something wrong with them. They're a regular person and this is fine. And I think that is so valuable. I mean, I have to say too, this is one of the few places where I get correctly gendered and, correctly pronoun. And so yay, thank you. It's helpful to me as well.
It's useful down here. You see down here, it's very useful.
Yes, it does help. Can I just
I'm
walk
relating a
around
lot
with
to
this?
I'm relating a lot to Richard with your kind of your framework of coming at it too, because I a lot in my own life, my role, my identities hasn't changed since a long time ago, but I had a lot to learn still, even though I same kind of thing. I'm married with 2 kids. I may have thought to myself that there wasn't as much for me to learn in this show, or maybe I can just tune in for the stuff that I already know I'm curious about. But tuning in every week and having the visibility of people that I care about and getting to know more about their own stories, their own learning the terminology, like you said, like these things that I didn't even know I was ignorant of. I think that's one of the most important things that I've taken away as first just an audience member and eventually getting involved with the show as a sex enthusiast myself. The show has something for everybody, even if you don't think you're interested in it. Like there's something about the topics that just draw you in because it's people's lives, and it's just there's something about it. It's really been special to be a part of.
I think that's one of the things with shows like this. Like a lot of people are like, "Oh, I'm cishet, so I don't have any business even tuning in to shows which would are queer spaces." I guess is one way of describing it, but it's that's not how empathy or understanding is built. And I think that's something that we're seeing as a problem at the moment. I've seen so many things that I'm not a pursuer of sexual things, let's say. So like seeing all of this stuff to me is like it's this whole other experience and world that it's outside of mine, but it's in other people's, and you get to understand. If you understand where people are coming from, it makes things a lot less alien or strange, and I think it makes it a lot easier to have conversations, like when you have someone to say something bigoted in a pub. Like I have had some conversations with family members I did not think were going to make a difference that ended up making a difference, and some of those were from hearing people's stories on this show, because it humanizes the experience. It's not just terminology and definitions. I think people get stuck in that, but you don't see the humanity behind it. So with the show like this, you get to see the people and the experiences, and it connects it to a more I guess human level. And I think like that's important for literally everybody, even if it's like a granddad who's super cishet and has been living wherever. Like everybody needs to know this stuff, otherwise nobody can relate to things, and it's easier to get misinformation or fear baited or whatever else. And I wish more people who were saying dumb shit at pubs would tune in. As someone who has been to many pubs and overheard much dumb shit, like it would be fantastic.
And on a best case scenario, maybe they'll learn something that actually does apply to them, and they have that opportunity to discover that for themselves too, which is kind of what happened to me in a lot of ways. So,
So all I will say to you, Richard, as we bring this pint to its conclusion, I'm assuming you're a pint drinker. You have that kind of vibe, and the Southern English woman would expect, somebody dwelling in the north of England to be, a proper bitter drinker. You're not a very bitter man, and it's probably gone down very smoothly, this pint. But thank you for the contributions you've made. And yeah, is there any one sentence you'd like to wrap the call up on?
I would just encourage people to, if they feel that they are ignorant in any way, because, I think a lot of people are aware of their ignorances, but don't really want to address them. And I think, if you do feel you're ignorant in any way, seek out those communities to learn from. I think that's a very important point to kind of push forward. Go and meet, if you've never met a trans person, go and talk to a trans person and, get to learn from them. That's how you learn, speaking to the people in those communities. They're not going to eat you. You will be quite safe with them.
But what I would say is don't look for the big sign that says trans person here. It doesn't exist. And on that note, thank you, Richard. And we have one more call on the line, and we have Jonathan from Florida. Pronouns are he, him. Hello, Jonathan. You are live on the finale of Secular Sexuality. You are live with Erin, Miss O'Kist, Phoebe, Cara, and Christy. What do you got to say to us all?
I just wanted to thank you all. I've been following the show for some time. I am a member of the ACA, and I'm also very active on Discord. And I have seen many of you. Actually, I also sit in every once in a while on the Recovery from Religion shows on Monday, talks, and I have found that this particular show has educated me immensely. As a gay man, I know a lot about the gay community, but I was clueless, literally clueless about just about anything else. I always considered just like Richard was saying, even though he's cishet, I didn't interact with, I had some interaction with the lesbian community, but that was about it. And the few trans people I met, it was like, hi, how are you? You doing well? And that was it. So I never learned about the culture or the people until I got involved with the ACA, which I expected to be a lot of education around atheism, but I found the resources and the people involved were much, much more than that. And speaking of Richard, Richard has taught me an awful lot. So, just himself as well. So, the people involved are amazing. And I'm going to miss this show incredibly because I catch it every week. And Christy is amazing, an amazing man. And so I wanted, you all are amazing, actually. I'm rather starstruck, especially with the kind of lineup you have tonight. It's like a little bit of fanboying out here. I'm starting to babble.
Oh
gosh.
I have to agree. I have to agree with you, Jonathan. Christy is fantastic. Christy is just wonderful. But then again, so is Erin, and so is Cara, and so is Miss O'Kist, and of course I am as well. I just have to say that I am as well.
Totally lovely.
That goes without saying.
We're all wonderful. We're all wonderful.
We're all
We
wonderful
really do.
around here. Yeah.
We really have a fun time when we do this.
Kara, I know
It's
is
been
wonderful.
great.
Her work is amazing. So.
Oh, thank you. I'm so glad to hear that you've been enjoying Recovering from Religion and the RFRX program. That is also continuing. So
Yeah, I got to
Definitely always
join,
welcome
and
there.
you have a lot to be proud of everything you've accomplished there. They do really, really great work. And Jonathan, I just really appreciate you, taking a moment to acknowledge the impact here.
Very much of an impact, and I think in a lot more people than any of us realize. So,
But I say, as we
so anyway, go ahead.
I talk over people. That's what I do. Sorry.
But I was just
Go
going to
ahead.
ask Jonathan. Well, as we're going on hiatus, what would you like the show to look like when it comes back?
I did this in the chat. Glitter, lots of glitter.
Glitter bombs.
All right. That's an aesthetic we
Yes.
should explore. I think I'm here for
Notes
it.
taken.
Also, I think that another one of my favorite people, Kelly Laughlin, came up with the bigotry duck, and everybody should have a bigotry duck.
I like that. Yeah, I like that.
So is this a bigoted duck that just has like an Afflecky type voice and says offensive things? Because I kind of hate that, but a little bit of me loves it in like a violent video game scenario. I don't know.
No, it's like he had one there when he was live in Austin, but it's a duck that whenever somebody's being bigoted, you can squeeze it and go quack.
Better. Okay. So it's an anti-bigotry duck.
Anti-bigotry duck. Yeah. I'll let
I love
Kelly
that
explain
idea.
it sometime. Yeah. But
I'd
yeah,
like to know
bigotry
more
duck
about
would be
this.
nice too.
Now, does this
And glitter.
anti-bigotry
Lots of
duck
glitter
have to be
bombs.
used in the bath? Do we use the anti-bigotry duck in the bath? That's the next question.
I think we need
Well,
to.
thank you for
explore
letting me
that.
talk to you. This has been great, and keep up the good work in other projects. And when you come back, you'll definitely have somebody like me sitting here calling in to just chatter with you. So,
Hey,
Well, you're
thank you so
invited
Have a
to
good evening.
the next show.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Jonathan, and thank you to all of our callers, not just tonight, but over all of the years that Secular Sexuality has been running. And I'd just like to throw the floor open to everybody. What is your absolute number one takeaway from the calls that we've had?
I'll jump in first if I may, and then get out of the way. We had a call very early on where somebody called in with a incredibly complex sort of domestic violence-y, trans-denying type circumstance. And, it was just a bunch of atheists sitting in a studio staring at a camera trying to think of like, well, we're not equipped to fix this. We're not equipped to offer a solution to this problem. And a few months later, and then again a few years later, we heard back that, a fix, a solution wasn't what was being asked for, wasn't what was needed. It was a little bit of conversation, of camaraderie, of just the compassion of sitting with somebody in a situation like that made me realize that shit like this matters, that it can work. You know, it can feel very much like we are just sort of like shouting out into the abyss, please stop being bigots. And then the abyss likes to shout back, no, racism, bigotry, like it's done. So don't worry about it. And to just realize that, yeah, something that we work on here actually can have some sort of impact on the world made me not just want to do this show, but made me want to actually care about volunteering, about doing things, and about working on this planet that we all share as something of a priority. But please, let me turn it over. I think, Aaron, you had something you wanted to jump in with?
Oh, I'm happy to go next. I think that one of the biggest takeaways I have from all of the calls here is that you don't necessarily know the bubbles that you're in, maybe. So part of, I mean, not everybody in this show was a Christian or Muslim or even religious at all before they kind of came to the community of the atheist community of Austin. I did, and so I had a lot of learning to do in this big, like, I didn't realize how many bubbles I was in. And so I think this show, what it has represented for me and all the calls is people kind of actively constructing or reconstructing their own lives for themselves, whether they deconstruct it first. But my biggest takeaway is that you do that in community with people. And so calling a stranger on the internet and having that back and forth, the best way to kind of grow and, you know, learn about yourself and get outside your comfort and outside your bubbles is to do it in community. And, you know, we've had lots of times where we don't get to be in person, but we've got this thing, the internet, where we can contact each other. And so seeing people connecting from all over the world, seeing hosts from different countries getting together, and I think that's just like something that was really important for me to witness and then be a part of.
I mean, just looking at this shot, there's 3 people here. One is in Canada, one is a Brit in America, and one is a very English woman here. And I think that's another thing that this show does show, that this is a global community. We are from all around what is mainly the English-speaking Western Hemisphere, but we do get calls from Israel, Germany, Poland, all over the place. We've got calls from, and the calls that I will always remember when I have sat and just listened to episodes on my long and boring commute along the very dull A roads and M roads of southern England are those ones where you just go, huh, that is something I have never considered before in my life. And you hear topics on things you've never considered before in your life. It's like Christy mentioned, the having sex with a doll episode, having a relationship with a doll. Okay, I'll admit it. Before I went into that, I would have giggled my head off. But after that, it's like, oh, hang on. This is something that I shouldn't be ridiculing. I'm only ridiculing it because I'm coming at it from a place of ignorance. And each one of those calls and each one of those topics and each one of those calls on those topics did a little bit in my brain. And I hope it did a little bit in everyone else's brain to just, you know, chip away at that wall of ignorance that we all have. And it's just fantastic that these calls have helped us to have these conversations that we would never have had. And some of these calls have become full-blown episodes of secular sexuality, and that is very fantastic, I think.
I think, like, oh, sorry, if I can. Okay. Like, I want to harken back a little bit to your earlier point about, like, the return callers. And one of the things that I think this show really highlights is that, like, gender and sexuality is very much a journey. I know when I'm, like, talking to a lot of younger people, especially, like, in, like, the ace communities, people have this, like, idea that, like, I am 15, I have to have it figured out. I need to know if I'm a boy, a girl, neither. And I'm like, you don't. You will figure it out eventually. Like, I remember, like, we had some of the calls where people come back and you get to see, like, the beginning of someone's journey of, like, realizing something about themselves, and then they come back and you get, like, this update. And I really, one of the things I love about this show is, like, those journeys, like, when people do come back and it goes from like a curious question to like a eureka moment. And I always think that's kind of amazing. Like, I remember one story, it wasn't from here, but it was about a woman who found out she was asexual in her 80s, and was like this like aha moment. And I'm like, yeah, it took her to her 80s to figure it out. Like, everybody is a work in progress the whole time, whether it's you've been sheltered from like a lot of subjects through religion or a very conservative background, or just lack of access to ideas. And I find it fascinating watching everybody kind of, I don't know, figure their stuff out and grow on their journeys.
Yeah, and that reminds me, I wanted to follow up on that. We've congratulated ourselves on being awesome, but also I really wanted to thank all of the people who called in over the years with really interesting questions that actually sparked all of these conversations that we're referring to. And for having the courage to call into a public show and ask a bunch of strangers personal questions that could be deeply embarrassing or bringing up, shame or traumatic past events and everything else. That takes a lot, I appreciate that people were willing to do that and to help us think through things in new ways. And also, I agree. I love it when people call back and give us updates on what's going on and let us see the progress. And also, I have to give credit too to, the large number of people that shared resources with us that were amazing. For example, I'm telling on myself now, I had never seen the show Big Mouth for years until someone mentioned it, and I'm like, how did I miss this? How did I not know about this? What am I doing with my life? And
if you reach one person, no wait.
Exactly. So I just wanted to say thanks to everybody that made the show possible by calling in and talking to us about really interesting things. So thank you.
Yeah. Well, and before we set up the last clip of the night, I guess I wanted to just acknowledge how proud I am of a lot of the people who have come through here, and I'll get weepy and say some of my thanks there at the end. But specifically, everybody who has been on the show this season, and everybody who is here tonight is somebody that we got to interview before bringing them onto the show. They were somebody who was from the community rather than just, I want to be an atheist on camera. We were all folks who are part of this mission and that were willing to volunteer their time about their areas of expertise before we brought everybody together in this way. And I as a therapist, I have kind of blushed a couple of times throughout the years as people talk about me as some sort of expert. And yeah, I read a lot of books as well as I can, but I'm a clinician. I have kind of a narrow range of what I am able to offer from a professional standpoint. And so when we have this incredibly diverse group of people to have these conversations with, those callers that are calling in from all over the world are getting to interact with all kinds of different people. One of my favorite ones of those interactions was a episode that we did with Sinsage and Amberly Rothfield, where Amberly got to say all of the things that I could never really say that really, I think, make bodily autonomy as clear and concise as it could possibly be. If we're ready, let's go ahead and show that clip.
When I was pregnant with my first child, I had a lady come up to me and put her hands on my belly and start rubbing. And I didn't think. I just got so mad. I kind of feel bad for this, but I just reached out and grabbed her boobs and squeezed. And she looked at me like,
that's how it feels. That's how it feels.
Perfect thing to do.
Yeah.
No, Amberly, do not feel bad for that. That was the thing you were supposed to do.
That was the thing I was supposed to. But yeah, and she jumped back and she was like, "What are you doing? You're assaulting me." And I was like, "Oh, I just thought it was an appropriate touch day."
Right?
Like,
yeah,
that was a holiday. Like, this is what we do today.
Yeah.
And she's like, "I was rubbing your belly. There's a baby in there." And I was like, A, you didn't know that. B, don't touch me. Yeah.
It's still my body. And even if it was my baby, it doesn't mean you can reach out and touch my fucking baby either.
Pretty much.
All right. Well, I hate to sit here and just read to the camera, but I will be way too choked up if I try and say this any other way. So before we wrap up tonight, I wanted to offer not just my sincere gratitude, but also, if I may, my very real plea to everybody listening. Over the past 5 years, Secular Sexuality has been a remarkable opportunity for me to learn so much about the world of gender and sexuality, to meet and introduce the internet and my community, the atheist community of Austin, and the world beyond, to so many different ways to find love and erotic expression and emotional intimacy and connection. I want to sincerely thank a number of people at the ACA, and I feel bad about all the people that I have to leave out, but need to make sure to mention Vern Grainer for always believing in this show, and Greg James and Katie Stewart for working tirelessly and putting up with me to try and execute my disorganized vision, as well as our incredible crew members, more people that I can count, and people that I am proud to continue working with. I want to say thank you in particular to folks who aren't here tonight who contributed on screen. Megan Bonner and Serafina Smith, we got to speak to. Jenna Belk and Rudy B, Laura McGee, Puck, Nate Smith, Amberly Rothfield, Sin Sage, Jason, Mark, and Malty, and all of the other people here with us tonight. All of these hosts we've seen tonight are folks who guested on the show first, and it's made me so proud to meet each of you along the way. And finally, I do want to stress that this isn't the end for secular sexuality, or at least the ACA's enduring mission to develop and support atheist community, to provide opportunities for socialization and friendship, to promote atheist viewpoints, to encourage a positive atheist culture, to defend the First Amendment principle of separation of religion and government, to oppose discrimination against atheists, and to work with other organizations in pursuit of common goals, including the protection and the free expression of gender, love, and sexuality in all of its forms. No doubt we will be back on the air in some form or fashion, and perhaps as early as this summer. But if you've stuck with us this far, let me just take a moment to encourage you to consider the importance of that mission in this moment in the world. Our rights to love and marry have never been fully established into law and are increasingly threatened. Our bodily autonomy and freedoms of expression are being routinely barked down by IRL trolls and armed protesters. Our marginalized community members are receiving vitriolic hate, not just from the darkest corners of the internet, but from the broadest parts of our entertainment and our cultural and political discourse. This show is sadly taking a moment to step back at a time in the world where purity culture and puritanical ideas of love, life, and freedom are being enforced with increasing violence. Thank you most of all to everyone who has watched and called in and donated and been a part of our community, and for being a part of our small effort to fight back against that. Please do not let this be the end of your fight. I know it won't be the end of ours. And with that, I would love to see everybody's smiling faces and take a moment to, I suppose, say goodnight.
Thank you for that, Christy. Everyone else that's waving on the screen right now. Before we go to the end here, I do want to acknowledge other ways that people have been a part of the show, everybody who's donated and helped make this production happen as well. It takes a lot of resources to make these things happen. And while we do take this hiatus, there is still merchandise that's available for people who want to continue to support this vision. And obviously, things are going to be a little bit different in the future, but there is this branded merch that is now a limited time offer. So get it before it goes away. Before I forget, we also did want to acknowledge that we had a super chat. So that is going to be something going forward too. Another way to donate directly to these programs. We had a super chat from Clit Liquor. So thank you for that.
Longtime fan, longtime contributor. I always see you in the chat. Thank you so very much for.
And I loved hearing that in the Canadian accent. It was
Yes.
just lovely.
So that's going to be another way that you can support these programs going forward too. So keep your eye out for chances to contribute in that way. And please do keep up with us here at the Atheist Community of Austin. You can always email us at sex@atheist-community.org or email the ACA directly at tv@atheist-community.org. You can keep up with everything going on at the Atheist Community of Austin at the website. The website has been revamped recently, and so there's definitely stuff on there to check out, and just keep in the loop with whatever happens with this program going forward. Send us your comments and questions and suggestions if you have something that you would like to see going forward. Last but not least, this probably the thing that I wanted to stress the most is thank you to our crew. Let's bring up our crew cam. It's actually, they're up there already now that I see it. Thank you, crew. Things don't always go the way we planned, but we did it. We're here, and I'm so happy that we all got to spend this time together. And thank you so much for all the work and stress and all of the things that you put into the show as well. And to my fellow hosts and co-hosts, and to Christy in particular, thank you so much for everything you've done with this. And it's been really great and really special. And I can't wait to see what happens going forward.
Yeah. Well, I managed to make it all the way through. I've only cried on camera on this show once, and it was a year ago, actually, the anniversary of our state attorney general sort of turning all of their barrels towards trans kids. And so I guess I just want to continue to echo that there is so much work more to be done. We will definitely be back to do it. We're very grateful for everything that has happened here and all of the wonderful people that we've met along the way. And while I'm still keeping my streak alive, I guess this is certainly not the last time that I hope any of you do this, but maybe for me, one more time, I want to ask each of you to remember Daryl Ray's mandate and everything that he put in motion when he started this show and taught all of us so much about the importance of self-acceptance, of embracing our sexuality. So do it. Go ahead and give yourself a big ol' orgasm. Or better yet, give somebody else
one. Outro.
Have you ever wanted to be a host on an ACA show or be the one calling the shots behind the scenes? Are you in Austin, Texas, or at least Austin adjacent? Well, on Saturday, February 25th, make your way down to the Free Thought Library because we'll be holding open auditions for show hosts and orientations for prospective crew members. For those wanting to be hosts, you'll be able to sit in the studio where our shows are broadcast and we'll put you through your paces to see if you can be one of the new personalities of the ACA. For future crew members, you'll get hands-on experience using the equipment used for broadcast and will help us record the host auditions. If you've ever dreamed of being part of the ACA productions, then this is your chance to show us what you've got. This event is free. For more information and registration, visit tiny.cc/ACA auditions.
So long, and thanks for all the shows.